those tornadoes come rolling through. Even in dreams they'll make you wonder what to do. The walls are shaking, the silo fell, and yet you're calm as your foundation gets beat all to hell. But still there are some times when your mind rewinds. It's a slow, hard climb on the trail where you find that I have been here once before. Not sure exactly when, not sure exactly where, and I don't know what for. But here I am again, and here we're gonna go. I wish that I knew where, but I don't have a clue. Just a little deja vu. If it'll happen, it's in the hand. Even with jokers over races, that's the plan. So you can trade them or cash them out, or wear contentment while the others are.
Welcome, I'm Kevin Bulmer. This is Journeys with the No Schedule Man. We are here to celebrate and share the journeys of heart-centered entrepreneurs who have challenged themselves to act on their inspiration so that they can expand and grow. Together, we explore their triumphs, challenges, thoughts, feelings, and lessons learned. And today, we've got an incredible story for you from one of my favorite people, Brendon Culliton, the Mystic Spider-Man, the founder of Paradigm Shift Central, which is a portal for consciousness shifting media and a global team of shifters. At ParadigmShiftCentral.com, you'll find featured inspirational content and leaders or content from leaders actively helping accelerate the shift in consciousness through creativity and compassion. Now, what exactly does that mean, and how and why might you want to get involved? Well, we'll find out with Brendon in just a moment. Want to remind you that this podcast is available both in terms of audio and video all over the place where podcasts are available. Subscribe now, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio. You'll find us on all of those channels. If you prefer the video, and we've been videos since about episode 83, I think. All the previous episodes are still available on YouTube. They just stream the audio with kind of still slides. Very captivating. But the audio is great, and it's available both on YouTube and Facebook. You'll find us at No Schedule Man. Hook up with us and connect, and we'll help shift the consciousness along with Brendon as best we can. Also invite you to jump on board via email. You can receive our free letters from the Little Engine, inspirational emails every couple of weeks. We'll also notify you of anything else that we think that you would find beneficial. You can hop on board today at noscheduleman.com/email. You've probably got your phone either in your hand or within reach. Why not go on there right now and get yourself signed up? noscheduleman.com/email. All aboard. I want to say thanks real quick to some people who have made it possible for us to bring this presentation to you. Journeys with the No Schedule Man is presented in part by Diamond and Gold Treasures, located at 4330 Colonel Talbot Road here in London, Ontario, Canada, offering some of the finest jewelry in the area, along with jewelry repair and custom design. Like and follow their Facebook page, and you'll get exclusive deals at the store. Learn more at diamondsgold.com. Mo Mondays London is the inspirational event series hosted by yours truly once a month right here in London, Ontario, Canada, at a place called the London Music Club. Think TEDx meets the Tonight Show with maybe a little bit of the Muppet Show tossed in. If you want to experience one in your city, connect with me and let me know. Either way, you can learn more at momondays.com/London. Thanks to Ryan and the team at Mulligan Realty Group from being available whenever you need them to genuinely caring about you and the service that you get. They do things differently at Mulligan Realty Group, the kind of realtor you deserve. Learn more at mulliganrealtygroup.com. Thanks also to Brett and the team at Provincial Glass and Mirror, a professional full-service glass company owned and operated in southwestern Ontario. You can find them at provincialglass.com. Trickett Financial, Carol Trickett offers insurance and investments for Canadians and newcomers to Canada. Connect with Carol and learn more at trickettfinancial.com. Trickett with two T's there in the middle, trickettfinancial.com. And the turtletribe.com. The Turtle Tribe is a unique online coaching community where we support heart-centered entrepreneurs and creative souls to experience more of what they desire and deserve. Run your own race at your own pace and from your own place. Would love for you to join us there. Learn more and join us today at theturtletribe.com. Today, episode number 102. We're well past the century mark in Journeys with the No Schedule Man. And we're joined by the founder of Paradigm Shift Central. He's somebody that I connected with actually through my efforts with momondays London, which I just mentioned a moment ago. He's the videographer with momondays London and has done some work here in the London, Ontario community with awesomepreneurs and many others besides. But that's just the tiniest little tip of a much larger story related to Brendon Culliton. Brendon has also been known by many other names, such as, let me see how many of them I can get here, Mystic Spider-Man, Wolf Shield, Skull Babylon. They're all good. They're all great as long as they lead back to you. It's great to see you. How's your day going today so far?
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin, so much for having me. All things considered, it's going great. You know, today's just been a really great day just to be able to practice gratitude. And yeah, the world's a little bit different right now, but in some ways it's almost richer. You know, like my attention is more kind of aware of just kind of like the sunshine and the fresh air and like the food on my plate and the friends who I get to talk with. So all things considered, man, I'm just really glad to be here and be able to help share some inspiration. And thank you again for inviting me and for just helping us ripple the smiles and spread the smiles even further. So
yeah, absolutely. You're one of the most interesting people that I've ever come to know. I'm really grateful for you. I really appreciate you, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to share more of your story, and to welcome some of the people that know you and your story into what we're doing here with Journeys with the No Schedule Man. But as far as Paradigm Shift Central is concerned, boy, it's difficult to even know where to start. I'll start here. When do you first recall even realizing that there was a paradigm to shift?
That's a great question. So, you know, like I think it was just kind of like back in the day, I was always a curious kid kind of growing up. And, you know, you kind of talked about this, the idea that like the work that I do, I frame it around the context of trying to assist with the shift in consciousness. So I guess, you know, it kind of involves us defining what consciousness is. And in its simplest form, consciousness is awareness of self, awareness of our environment, awareness of connection, and awareness of our potential within this world that we are a part of. And so, you know, growing up in school and everything like that, it was always just kind of like a matter of fact. I really enjoyed like my philosophy classes, even just in high school. But then by the time I started getting into college, you know, the internet was just kind of really evolving. And I was naturally just starting to begin exploring a lot of like esoteric topics related to like mindfulness and meditation, dreaming, lucid dreaming. All of these things were just naturally coming into my path. And I was really fascinated. And most importantly, I was fascinated by the idea that there were other people out there that were exploring this. And, you know, there's people way before us who talked about a lot of this stuff. And I grew up listening to lectures by people like Alan Watts and Terence McKenna, and even just being able to explore my way around bookstores and finding old books on bookshelves that were written in the 70s about like parapsychology and really big questions like, you know, like life beyond death and UFOs and Sasquatch and all of these things. And it was naturally just, for me, I'm just like, okay, you know, like there's more to this reality than meets the eye, you know, like there's layers to what it is that we get to experience within this life. And I was just curious. I was curious to explore and to research and to learn, and also most importantly, to be able to experience. So ultimately, once I started realizing that there was substance to a lot of these ideas, I wanted to be able to start like, you know, connecting with other people who are also exploring these paths. And ultimately, at the end of the day, without it really having to get like too out there, I think one of the biggest things in relation to the shift in consciousness is really just helping people remember how interconnected we are. And how much, you know, like we think that we're separate because we got different names and physically we're different bodies and everything like that. But consciously, from a higher dimensional level, which more people are starting to are kind of tapping into, it's just like, oh my God, like we're connected. We're so intimately connected. Like, I am you, you are me, namaste type thing. And so at the very least, once I started becoming aware of this, I really started to become aware of how powerful we can be within this reality to be able to inspire people through compassion, and to be able to just like use love as a medium to be able to convey a message, and to be able to inspire people, and to be able to like help people find like their own joy and their own connection with the world around them. That's really going to light their spirit, light their, ignite their soul, kind of like awaken them, so that they can kind of like have these aha moments and be like, oh my God, like what is this? What am I? What is this reality? So, a lot of it just came from being curious and asking questions. And then once I realized that there was layers to it, I really wanted to just be able to do what I could to be able to help make a difference, and to, just kind of like create a ripple effect that evidently has created waves all across the world. And it's not just me, it's a bigger story in itself. So
I'm curious if there was ever a time for you that you now can reflect back upon, and sort of look at, I'm looking for the right vocabulary here, as sort of a pre-consciousness shifting, or a pre-aware Brendon, because you were talking about growing up with a lot of things. I'd never heard of Alan Watts until I was in my 40s and found somebody's like Twitter handle. I'm like, who's this guy? Everything that he says is incredible. But I had decades of time in my life where I just would never have been able to have the kind of conversation even that we're likely going to engage in here tonight, Brendon. You're suggesting that you kind of grew up just curious about all of these things, but was there a period when you were very young that you would look back to say that you weren't aware? Like, was there a tipping point somewhere in there?
I think the tipping point was a very gradual thing. It just kind of like slowly, just like, it's like the blossoming of a flower. It didn't just kind of like happen just like that, but like over time, it's like the pine cone just slowly expanding. But yeah, like I can think back to like when I was, probably in like grade 8, grade 9 and things like that. And even just back then, I was never really asking these questions. I think I was aware of them through pop culture and growing up with movies. And even when I was younger, I remember seeing The Matrix, and I was like, yo, like this movie like was blowing my mind. And then, I go back and watch it like 5 years later, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like an allegory for life. But I think there were a lot of seeds that were being planted along the way. And even growing up watching things like Star Wars, which now is like such a big part of the mythos that I resonate with, in terms of like, these guardians doing what we can to be able to help bring balance in the dance of shadow and light. But yeah, like I think it was one of those things where, as I just started finding other people and started exploring and started connecting and started researching, it gradually started opening me up. And then there were some like pivotal experiences. So yeah, I think the journey of awakening is something that we are all on, and it's going to look uniquely different for everyone. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. And I think it's fascinating that, I know for a fact that like, yeah, there's a lot of people who are going to be, later in their 40s and even in their 50s and even in their 60s. And then suddenly they'll wake up one day and they'll just be like, oh my goodness, like my paradigm is shifted. The way I'm seeing things is shifted, and that's no fault of their own. And so again, I think it's just something that, for me, knowing that there was kind of this spark within inside each and every single one of us, and this spark is, again, call it soul, call it spirit, call it consciousness, call it awareness. It's just, again, opening up to the idea that there's more to this reality than meets the eye. That this reality is so like richly magical in its very nature. There's a lot of stuff that's like hidden in plain sight. And again, it really draws back to the ancient axiom of like, as above, so below. And I remember even when I was younger, like starting to like look at trees differently. Like that was one of the earlier things that I remember, where like, there was a certain point where trees, they were just trees. And then like, okay, they produce oxygen, they got leaves, that's a thing. But then eventually I was like, wait a second, like, why do the trees look like the veins in my arms? And why do the veins in my arms look like rivers? And why do the rivers look like, like all of these other parts of the human anatomy? So it's like this idea of like, oh my goodness, there's these recurring patterns that exist all throughout nature. And it really kind of starts like building a bigger picture. And again, it kind of all comes back to like this unity. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far off, because I mean, we've barely even scratched the surface, even just in like terms of like what paradigm shift is and what I do and everything. But yeah, you know, like flash forward a little bit later, and I was in school for media production at Fanshawe and Western, and knowing that there was like kind of like this shift in consciousness that was happening, that people were awakening, that we were kind of like awakening within the dream, dreamers awakening within the dream. Evidently, I felt called to want to be able to do something, you know, and that was basically what inspired me. I'm like, okay, like if I can do something, I should do something. So much in the same way that you and I really resonate on this idea of like, you know, like just putting ourselves out there, creating content, creating space. And now more than ever, it's about being able to create sacred digital space. That's a very important space for people to be able to have these conversations, to open their heart, to share their journeys, and to realize how similar we actually are. And there's more that we have in common than we do that we have, you know, different. So yeah, like I'll let you just kind of like, you know, ask me more questions and stuff like that, because I don't want to just like go right into the story. But yeah, like at Western and Fanshawe, I started applying my skills as a media student, and I started making YouTube videos, and I started creating content that would start relating to these topics, and I created a club at the college, and then that eventually evolved to the online project, and now we do online broadcasts and global meditations, and there's people on my social media channel and they follow me, and we do meditations. And at the end of the day, it's really just about being able to inspire people and more or less building like a badass team of real world Jedi. Like that's who are here to change the world with love. That's more or less, that's what we're doing. So,
well, I'm still thinking you're sharing so much, which is absolutely awesome. I'm still wondering how I'm going to be able to steer us all the way back to Sasquatch, which was about 5 minutes ago.
Please do.
Maybe
all about the Sasquatch. That's
right. Well, maybe
that's the Lotus right there.
A whole episode or two just on that.
Yeah.
For those who are joining us live and watching, if you've got a question for Brendon or something that you would like me to ask him or mention to him, by all means, put it into the comments. Cheryl has just reminded us about what Wayne Dyer used to say, Brendon, about how when you change the way you look at the way you look at things change.
Yes.
Did I don't know if I did. I can't read.
Yeah.
But it's I'll be really direct and blunt. And who I'm kind of pointing the finger at is myself, not you. What I think I heard you say is that you started to really kind of become aware and explore all these kinds of things, connection and consciousness and upliftment as you were getting into grade 8 and going in through high school. If I had encountered somebody like you walking around in the halls of high school talking about consciousness, and I don't know if you were offering free hugs or whatever, like
no, not then. That part hadn't woken up yet.
But even just having those kinds of having that sort of vibe, I probably would have thought that you were an absolute kook. Now, I'm a meathead, or I was. I'm now an awakened meathead. But I sort of view my life as in a couple of different parts, and I'm in the second half of it now where I am more aware and more conscious, but things had to really break apart for me in order to get there. I'm curious about what interactions you've had, if any, with whether it's classmates or workmates or just people in general who are just quite frankly think you're weird, and how you deal with that.
Yeah. I didn't really like deal so much with that in terms of like the topic that we're talking about in relation to consciousness too much, because I mean I wasn't like really like explicitly like doing things like that until it was like later in my college, and again that's when like I created a club inside Fanshawe, and that was called Paradigm Shift Fanshawe, and basically that was like creating a space where we had meetings and they were like open-minded discussion meetings, and we invited people out and we practiced talking about like, you know, all sorts of weird stuff and metaphysics and everything. And we had some guest speakers come in who had their own experience with like, you know, like Reiki practitioners and, you know, meditation leaders, past life regression, lucid dreaming and everything. And so through that, I was starting to find a lot more of the people who understood where I was coming from and were also equally interested. And so in that sense, you know, it was really just about being able to support each other. There was really only a small handful of people within my college years who were just like were like, yeah, like, okay, man, like, okay. But like, it was never really something that like I took too personally. And it was never really something that I was like, oh, like, screw that guy for like not like agreeing with what I'm interested in, because everybody's going to be interested in what they're interested in. The same way I would never make fun of them if they had something that they were passionate about. You know, I didn't really take it too personally if they didn't really express the same interest. But there was no one who ever like explicitly like came up to me and was like, dude, like, you know, like, take your Sasquatch theories and get out of town or something like that. That never happened. But, you know, growing up, just again to be able to create some context, and I really, you know, I still carry this proudly. I was kind of like this like a almost like an in between two worlds kind of kid. Like I was very much like into the arts and into the drama and into like the philosophy, but then at the same time I was also like into sports, and I was like on the hockey teams, and I was like, you know, like playing like all the athletic stuff too. So I was very much like in both worlds, where like I was still friends with the jocks and things like that, and I got along with them. And then at the same time, you know, like there was this other part of me that was still like equally that. And then ultimately, you know, flash forward and the fact that like I grew up playing hockey all my life, and I was actually captain of my hockey team growing up, like numerous years. Like my dad was the coach for a bunch of it, so I was always like the son of the coach, if anybody can kind of like resonate with that vibe. So it always meant I had to like try even harder in a lot of ways. But being a captain of a hockey team, evidently in retrospect and kind of like reverse time theory, was essential for helping me evolve as a leader, for helping me kind of like grow into what I still do today, where I'm like facilitating and I'm directing. And it's really just, you know, in the same way for a captain of a hockey team, it's really much this mindset of, you know, like we're all equal. And this is the idea of like captains amongst captains. So the captain of the hockey team, it was never the best player on the team, quote unquote. The captain was just kind of someone who could, you know, talk to the referee, who could be a voice, and ultimately who kind of like carried a torch when need be to be able to help build morale and to be able to point and to be able to say like, let's go this way together type thing. And so that really taught me a lot about leadership growing up. And it's still things that I apply. And there's a lot of people who, you know, who follow my content and they really resonate with it, because they're just like, yo, dude, like, I feel like, you know, you're coming at this from a very grounded level. Like you can be very serious, but at the same time, you're also very like lighthearted and goofy, and you're playful. And so I still bring in a lot of that energy, but at the same time, like when I need to, it's like, okay, like team, like championship game, we got to win this. Like, let's focus our energy, let's build the morale, and let's do it. So helping people get excited about things and move forward, and, you know, get excited about their involvement, and for me to be a mirror for them to see themselves, has always been a part of kind of like who I was growing up, and it just naturally kind of evolved. So again, going back to your question though, I was never really like particularly like bullied in school. Fortunately, not that it never happened. But yeah, like it all in all, you know, like I'm looking back, like everything just kind of like helped me become who I am now. And I'm sure a lot of us can kind of, you know, relate to that in our own stories. So yeah.
I think what I'm doing by even having asked you something like that is revealing some of the stories that I'm telling myself, and the limitations that you know, some of the false walls that I've unconsciously built up over the years, that I'm only really now at 45 years old beginning to become aware of and actively starting to challenge. I mean, sometimes I'll look and I'll see things like today. I was looking, I think, at your Instagram feed, and the Mystic Spider-Man feed, and came across a video. I think it was in your story where you had the free hug sign up. And I mean, that alone, to stand on a street corner with a free hug sign while random strangers are going by, and I just wonder what kind of comments you maybe get. And
True,
but the video, to finish the thought, was that we're isolated now, we're distancing because of the coronavirus at the time that we're recording this, and so you sort of hugged yourself in an offer to hug other people. And when I see something like that, even though, you know, I'm the kind of guy that I'm really open about expressing when I love and appreciate people, yourself included. I'm a hugging kind of a guy. But when I see something like what you'll share, I can't help but think, man, I wonder what kind of comments or messages he gets from people who are just totally not on that wavelength. Because that, I admit, and again, this is a commentary about me, that sort of stuff still bothers me. Even though I know that there's really no reason for it to, and that I'm actively committing myself to letting those things go. Has that ever bothered you? Like, have you ever had to work through going like, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I should say
Yep.
this. What's that look like in your world?
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good point, and I've actually faced like more bullying like on the streets doing free hugs than I ever did in high school, so to speak. Again, I think in high school I was just kind of like a nice kid, like like there's only like one or two people that kind of like I don't know. There's a couple people they didn't like me for whatever reason, but that was probably said more about them than it did about me. But hey, that's in the past. But you're right. Like so again, just for context, for those of you who haven't like seen too much of my content, my YouTube channel and stuff, the links are all here and you can check it out. Here's one of the free hug signs that it's that's what it looks like, and you can actually see there's like the flower of life there. That's a symbol of like kind of like our connection that's found all throughout nature and stuff. But essentially, like this was kind of like later into I didn't start this until I was a little bit like a couple years into the project, after I had created the initial group in college. And and it was basically this idea of like, okay, like how can we help make a difference even more? How can we help accelerate things even more? And the free hugs thing didn't just arise on its own. Like that was kind of like something I had seen a couple people do it on the internet. Like it was still very like, it wasn't a common thing there, but it was something I'm like, it caught my attention. But essentially what I ended up doing is one of these days, my friend, he had a button machine. And so I have these buttons, you can see like the one on my shirt, and I share these with people in my community, and they have the Paradigm Shift Central website on it. And so essentially like what I would do is I would walk around and I would have these buttons and I would give them to people, and they would have like conscious symbols on them. So you can see this one, it's like what's known as sacred geometry. And then there's like other ones. This is like, again, another variation of the flower of life. And then you can see like there's like some other ones here that just like have all sorts of cool symbols on them. So to answer your question, just to get to answer your question, the context, when I was doing free hugs, it was a form of like, you could call it a social experiment. It was like almost like guerrilla, like social engagement. It was like very tactical. And the idea is like, okay, like I want to go out and spread compassion, but at the same time, I want to be able to do it in a way that's like going to connect people back to my social media. So that was kind of the benefit of the times, was the fact that, like YouTube channels were just starting to evolve, websites, people were coming more familiar with them, and people were creating their own websites. So I was like, yo, like I can create like dope videos. I can put them on a website. I can give someone a button and then they get everything that I put on the website. Opposed to, the alternative would be like handing them a pamphlet or like handing them like a DVD with files on it. But this was like a holographic tool. And that really, really excited me. So the free hugs thing was something that I naturally started doing, and I would do it on campus, and then I would do it downtown. And so you're right. Like I would do it in a way where basically it would be kind of like a game, like a social experiment, and what I refer to as an act of shiftivism. So in the same way, the word activism, that's kind of like this idea of like, you're kind of doing something, you're trying to make an impact. So this was shiftivism. It was activism with the intention of shifting consciousness. And this is a term where, again, it's, as I was filming videos, I was showing people, I'm like, yo, like I can do this and you can do this too. And I want you to do this here, like have some free hug signs. I'll mail them to you. Go do this where you are, because this works. And it also tied in with this idea of synchronicity, where kind of I had this like understanding that like time is like not as linear as we perceive it. So basically, through my own experience, I knew that if I were to stand there on a street corner with the right intention, that the right people would find me at the right time. And for them, it would be incredibly meaningful. They would come up and get a hug. And then basically I would run through this regular routine where they would hug, we would hug, and it would be like a genuine, meaningful connection, because that's so, so, so important. And then I would be like, oh, like here, by the way, like you passed the test, have a button. And then their face lights up and there's like, whoa, like seriously, like, whoa, like, because the button's like a cool gift to be able to receive. And then they take it, and then I'm like, there's a website on it. They wear it. Some people I've given buttons to like 7 years ago, they still have those buttons. There's thousands of these buttons just floating out there in the world now. And so again, just doing that, I knew that in doing it, it was making a difference. And I was getting the feedback, and people were like really excited, really inspired. It really, gave them this like sense of hope that there are people out there changing the world. And it wasn't just me, it's the team. It's, my friends who are watching this broadcast, and they're doing it in their own ways. It's not always going to be hugs. It's just going to be the way how we, share our heart and invite others to do the same. But to go back to your question specifically, there have been times where, you're right. People would walk by and they would either like mutter something under their breath, or they would explicitly just be like, that's too weird, man. Like, that's weird, and stuff like that. And, you know, in the same way, like, and when I did the talk at Mo Mondays, I kind of like talked about this, where basically, like, even in those moments, it's a reflection. I'm there as a mirror, and I'm there for them to sort of be aware of what they're seeing. And if they have that thought, that's more about them than it is about me. But even still, their initial reaction happens, but it still plants a seed. And then a lot of the times, you know, I have no idea what happens, but some people, they might just see me driving by, but then like that thought stays with them. The thought that somebody's out there doing free hugs. Why? You know, it makes them ask questions, or it makes them ask, be like, whoa, like, why do I not want a hug? And then eventually, you know, maybe they have a conversation with themselves, and then eventually they're like, you know, like, maybe next time, maybe I'll go up and ask them. Maybe I'll go up and ask them, you know, what's this about? So there's going to be some people, there's going to be people who are going to be like totally on the game and like totally like in sync with what I'm doing. They're just like, yo, I love this. This is awesome. I'm fully supported of this. Like, I understand, you know, like, they're into meditation, or maybe they're not there yet, but they're still curious. And then you're going to get people who are just naturally just like, what's this about? And they're asking questions, and that's really cool. And then again, you're going to be getting some people, and there's like, oh, this is stupid. But again, you know, it's kind of one of those things where it just kind of comes with the territory. And I've done it in multiple different circumstances. And at the same time, you do, and I encourage people, you know, if you're out there doing free hugs, do it safely. It is something where ultimately, you know, like, it can be something where you can put yourself in a vulnerable position. So you want to be able to put yourself out there and do it safely, you know? So like, for example, like if you're doing it late at night during the bar scene, do it with a friend or something like that. I've done it during bar scenes late at night in downtown London. I've done that plenty of times. And you're right. Every now and then there would be some people, but no one's like ever done like anything like physically, like no one's like ever like hurt me or anything like that. There'd be the odd person. They would be like, yeah, they run up for a hug, and then they'd be like, psych. And then they would keep walking. And then I would just be like, okay. Right. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, you try not to take it too personally, because you know why you're there. And you know that like, you being there and having that courage it's going to be meaningful. Even if there's like 50 people who might be like, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. If there's still that one person who's like, yo, this changed my day, this made my day, then you go home and you're just like, it was worth it. It was worth it, right? Because if you can change one person's world, you can change the world type thing. So yeah, I'll just kind of end it off there to you know, draw back to your question and everything like that. So it is something where you kind of have to open your heart, but at the same time, you kind of have to have like a toughness to you. And a deep trust and a deep understanding that the right people will connect with you at the right time. And then the tactics of like where you're putting yourself in situations where like, you know, you feel confident, you feel safe, you're doing it with friends, you're having a good time and everything like that. But yeah, again, you know, the whole free hugs things, I do it in such a way where we haven't even specifically touched upon this, but you know, a big thing that I advocate is the idea of people like being a real world superhero and reminding ourselves that the power of the heart is the most important power. And that is something that we all have. And this is something that, you know, anybody can learn. Like a child understands this. And there's like, oh yeah, you know, like hugs are powerful. Smiles are powerful. Kindness is powerful. And it literally, you know, like metaphysically, vibrationally, it has an impact. You know, it's contagious in that sense. It can change a vibrational field. If you're like hanging out with someone and you're having a bad day and that person's like, you know, in an optimistic kind of like calming, understanding mood, it can help you kind of like transmute that energy. It can help you shift to their energy. So that's where, you know, again, I've done free hugs, and there's been plenty of times where people have come up to me and they're just like, yo, like, you have no idea how much this means to me. And in some cases, you know, sometimes it could have been the first hug they've received in like over a year, or, you know, like it might've been something where they were just having a really bad day and they're just like, yo, this is exactly what I needed right now. So again, even in the midst of, you know, everything that's happening in the world, I think it's really just important to remind ourselves that like we need each other, and we do need physical contact. And I'm not in a rush to go out there and do free hugs. There's the idea of going out there and holding a sign that just says free smiles or things like that. But I really look forward to the day where, you know, like when free hugs, when I'm like legally allowed to go do free hugs again or something, who knows when or where that will be. I think that will be like kind of like a just like this like very powerful moment, and you're just gonna be like, okay, yes, like, you know, like we're here, we've made it type thing. So yeah, you know, for anybody here, I'm not telling you to go do free hugs right now, but I'm telling you to sit with the idea and just think about how you can emulate the same type of experience through the power of social media, through the power of creating videos. Even create a free hug sign. Do what I did. Create a free hug sign, film yourself on camera and hug yourself. Do something like that. Get creative with it. So yeah, again, going back to the idea of the superhero, there's the idea that like the world needs real world superheroes, and the power of compassion and the power of creativity is like how we change the world, how we change the timelines, how we merge and like open up new timelines, and how we shift the paradigms. So I'll leave it there. I'll pass it back to you, Kevin. So.
I was just getting ready to respond to a comment from Cheryl where she had said, I've tried commenting nice things to strangers. You never know. And I was just going to say, it's never a bad idea. We can't control somebody's reaction, but we can control our own and certainly our intentions. And yeah, you seem just so filled up with purpose that it's kind of like, I'm just going to channel this through me and just keep trying things, and just anything that really feels like it lights up and aligns with the larger mission is a word that I hear you use a lot as well. Then it fills you up, and it might just light somebody else up. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about at what point you knew you were going to have to devote yourself to this journey entirely. Mm-hmm. That's the question. The context of the question is, you know, as opposed to, I wonder if you were like me, where you went and you worked at A&W for a while, you worked at Red Lobster. Yeah, at least that's what I did when I was going through college. And then I've had a number of different paths in my career, and it took me a long time before I finally got myself onto the tracks that I feel like I was meant to run. You seem to me to be already there, and that you have been for a while. But at what point did you kind of arrive at the notion that you felt like you were going to have to devote yourself to this journey entirely?
That's a great question. I'd say specifically it chronologically happened around 2000, between 2009 and 2011. Within that period, it was really something where, you know, like there's this whole other story, and this was actually again something that I talked about in the Mo Mondays talk, and you know, maybe we can make sure that's in the link at some point for people to check out. And
I'll get right on that, sir.
As we're just like directing each other.
If you could take it away for a minute. So, and for context here, what you're just getting into, the story that you're telling, this would have put you in your early 20s, I guess, huh?
This would have been, yeah. So I would have been about 21 at this point. And long story short, I went out to Vancouver, and I was there as like for an intern for work. I was there for 3 months. I met some like other like hippies. These were like the first like actual hippies that I met. I mean, I'm using that kind of like as an air quote. They were just like young people like myself at the time who were just kind of like really on their own journey of awakening. And they were kind of like the first people that I met that were like speaking the same language of me. And I was like, yo, okay, this is important. This is happening. Went through some experiences there, had some great conversations, really opened up my mind to what is out there and what this reality, like, you know, like what it's about. And the idea that there's like, you know, like what we're seeing right now is just like a filtered version of this reality. Scientifically, we only see like 0.1% of the light spectrum. So it was kind of becoming aware that like we're literally in this like ocean of energy, and we literally are these like beings of light. Like these like physical like bodies are actually like light. And I know that sounds crazy and everything like that, but it really just kind of at that point, it was no longer theory for me. It was like, oh my goodness, this reality is very, very magical, very, very spiritual by nature. And there's a spark inside each and every single one of us. And I just naturally felt the call where, again, you know, like kind of similar to you, like if I wasn't doing it, I wouldn't be, you know, there'd be a part of my soul that would just be like hungry for it, yearning for it. So it's been an ongoing journey of learning and trying and exploring and creating and facilitating. And over time, you know, just like through getting the feedback and then evolving and it wasn't, that's what I mean. It wasn't probably until about 2011, 2012 that where it kind of shift from being just like a hobby to being more of like an entrepreneurial endeavor. And that's where I started getting into the sacred commerce. And I was like, okay, like here I am, I'm doing like broadcasts once a week, and I was putting out content, and I'm like, okay, like how can I get supported in this? That's when eventually, like a few years later, I created my Patreon, and I was like selling buttons and everything like that. And now, again, it's at the point the business is still growing, and it is something that is like constantly evolving. But it is something where, like, yeah, in addition to like still working a couple other jobs here and there and everything like that, the majority of my time is devoted to this. And I'm so grateful, again, just for like the support of the community, for my Patreon supporters who really see, like, who share the same joy and the value of what it is that I'm creating and what it is that we're working on. So yeah, you know, like even when I was young, it was definitely something where I was like, okay, you know, if I can do something, then I should do something. You know, it's kind of like literally going back to the superhero axiom: with great power comes great responsibility. And for me, that power was, you know, like my media skills. It was my leadership as a hockey captain, you know, back in the day. It was just my devotion, my tenacity. All of these things were just like, okay, like it was really kind of the idea that, like, if I don't do it, who will? And that idea of not knowing who would do it was really unsettling for me. And so it was never really a question of should I or shouldn't I? It was always just like, I'm doing this. And at the same time, I'm kind of trusting, similar to, you know, talks that you've shared, Kevin, where it's like, I'm trusting that just by like me following my heart, me listening to my heart, me just kind of doing what inspires me, then things will kind of open up as they go and things will unfold as they go. And that's been a big part of the journey, is really, you know, trusting the process. And this is, you know, a message for everybody out there. If there's something deep within your heart that's calling you, like the way I explain it is that that's actually like data from the future that's like beckoning you. So if it's in your heart, go there, because there is a path before you, even if you don't fully see it at the time, which again, you know, kind of thinking fourth dimensionally and things like that. So fourth dimensionally, I was always devoted for this. And then like as the years unfolded, it was like, okay, like I have arrived, and you know, here we are now. And again, I'm going to keep doing this for as long as I live and beyond. So
I was worried that when you mentioned the fourth dimensionally thing, he's referencing one of the talks I gave at a recent Mo Mondays London. Now I'm going to have to go and find that link and post that too. So, as soon as you tell me to be, I'm off and running. It's a, I feel like you and I have a unique relationship, and one that is a good example of how we can really discover ourselves, learn about ourselves through the reflection of each other. I'll give you an example. I view myself still, although I am years past kind of the tipping point of kind of breaking open my perspective and really going on a journey that seems to have been a lot more natural to you from a much earlier age, which is terrific. You've got a 20-year head start on me, which is great. But I still consider to be myself to be a bit of a tightly wound spaz. And I can get very intense. I still have very rigid ideas, I think, in terms of how things should be or not be. And I'm doing my best to relax those things. But we'll often work together on things. Most recently, we've been working together on some videos and things like that. And you have such an incredible gift at being able to let, and I'm not trying to be critical of myself here, I'm just using it as an example, to just sort of let the noise wash by, almost like a balloon spinning around the room, losing all its air, and waiting until it sort of blows itself out and lands on the ground, and then being able to go, okay, now what do we want to make of this? Letting the noise pass by and filtering out the parts of it that really matter to connect to. And I don't know if I'm doing this justice, but there are a number of times where you'll table something for discussion, for consideration on a creative project maybe that we're working on. And I am starting to see now, by observing your calm and your openness, how I sort of immediately jump to, well, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. You have the ability to give it space and be okay with it either way. And if I kind of come around, I come around. And if I don't, I envision you just sort of like Okay, but let's not be burning a whole bunch of energy trying to grab the balloon that's blowing itself out of air, out of the atmosphere, and then haul it down here to where it makes sense. And so working with you and observing you is helping me layer by layer to start to build that space between the noticing and the reaction, or the noticing and the response, or the decision, or the next word or instruction or something like that, and to be more open. I'm curious about, that's a compliment, by the way, in a really roundabout sort of way, and a deep and sincere expression of gratitude and appreciation, because it's really helpful to me. But I'm curious about what that looks like on your side, if you even think about it, whether it relates to me or any of the population at large that you perceive being rigid, expending energy on things that ultimately it's like, okay, that's your choice, but these are the energetic pieces that really move the needle. So I'll focus on those, and I'll let the others go. How does that look like? How does that look from where you're sitting?
Yeah, that's a really, really cool question. It's a really interesting thing to think about. I think, like, now, especially with, again, the events of the world and everything like that happening, it's really important for us to be like responsible with where we're putting our energy. And you kind of said it, the idea of like, what are we doing to move the needle forward? And so it's okay, to be informed, or to, like invest energy like on a few things at once. But evidently we have to kind of like take the time to kind of like shift from just kind of trying to maybe juggle too many things at once, to just be able to like bring it back to like a calmness and a center and a place where we can just open up to a little bit more clarity. And then again, similar to what you say, it's not always something where we like need to know like 50 steps ahead, because ultimately we're only going to take one step at a time. But I think what I've found over the years as a creator is that we have this ability to actually get good at listening to our heart. And within our heart, there's this wisdom, and this wisdom literally is like data coming from the future. And this is like kind of a theory that I have, that, if you ever talk about the chakras, there's like different chakra points throughout the body. And my understanding is that like these chakras are literally like energetic portals that you can't see physically, but you can feel them, you can experience them. And they literally receive information from the future. And so if you get good at listening to your heart, that's like one of the chakras where like inspiration comes through. And so I think in a lot of ways, we as humans collectively are making the shift from being like really, really in our heads in order to be able to learn how to be able to move into our heart. And sometimes you have to be really in your head, and you have to kind of like hit your head against the wall and try and do things. And eventually you're going to be like, okay, like that took a lot of energy, and how much further did I get ahead? And maybe it didn't really work, but this is the important thing. Whatever choice you make is still going to be meaningful, because it's going to help you learn. And so I think at the end of the day, it's really important to just be aware of the steps that we're taking, and to be able to like continue to be open to learning what is needed within those lessons. So again, if we're just like coming at it from purely the head, and we're just trying to get like super analytical and everything like that, and or maybe we're trying to do too many things at once, we're trying to use brute force, that may get us a little bit further. But again, eventually, like it's going to hit a point where we're going to be like, okay, let's slow down. Let's look at the bigger picture. Let's open up into more of our heart. And when we do that, it can just kind of like open up to, another way of approaching things, or another way of just being like present in this moment. So, I mean, yeah, whether or not that fully answers your question, I'm just kind of, I can tell myself I'm just kind of like thinking of a couple things at once here, even at the same time.
Well,
go ahead. Yeah. Pass it back to you.
I want to jump in on a thread that you're that you've sort of explored here, where you talked about that we don't need to see 50 steps ahead to just take the next step. I agree, and I also I'm going to word this in. I've always been. I'm going to come back around to making this a question to you about vision versus the detail of the next step, the presence. The engagement of the step that we're in currently. I've always been the kind of person that has felt like, even when I was a lot more uptight and wasn't what I would classify as being aware or conscious, I always felt like while other people were maybe, or maybe even not, trying to think about how to get A to connect to B, I felt like I was already connecting all the way down through the alphabet and then thinking about the next one. And I've always felt that that was a bit of a superpower, but it took me a long time to realize that I was actually limiting myself in that way. In many cases, because I was thinking, well, because I can see it, this is how it's supposed to go. I should be able to engineer this somewhat more linear journey, because in my head and heart, it just makes sense that this connects to that, connects to this, connects to that. Forward into where we are now, and how we are, evolved to the beings that are having this conversation. I feel like there's a difference between vision, having a vision, visualizing, seeing into the future, like you talked about, getting excited about it, having intentions, having a desire, an expectation of things that we are moving toward, that we are moving into being, that we are shaping with our thoughts and experiences. But not allowing that to pull us too far ahead of the present moment and the next step. Not to get so intimidated by, how am I going to get all the way to the top of the mountain when there's just one more step along the side that I'm at right now, where there's maybe a flower growing out of the side of the mountain, or there's somebody else here to enjoy this with. What's that look like for you, the balance between what I'll call vision, a big vision, and the next step? How much do you even have a big vision, or are you just sort of taking it as you go?
I definitely have a big vision, and to clarify, like, a lot of the work that I do approach it from like a very sort of like tactical perspective. Like, again, this kind of goes back to hockey. This goes back to my fascination with like video games and strategy, and even just kind of like, in a lot of ways, I kind of like grew up with kind of like this like almost like militaristic mindset, where it's like, if you're gonna want to like you prepare to change the world as if you were like preparing to go to war type thing. And you kind of have to have a strategy. You have to have tactics. You have to have implementation. And again, kind of going back to the free hugs thing, it's like, okay, like, here's my tactics. I'm going to go down XYZ, meet at, like Central in Richmond, do free hugs, do this, got all my tools, and I had everything there. And you kind of like hold the vision. But I think what's important is, even if you have the vision, it's kind of trusting that how you get there may not be fully what you expect. And so you have to kind of be ready for the flexibility within that moment. And there was actually a big moment within my journey where I experienced this very, very rapidly, in a very transformational way. Back in 2013, I went to California to take part in a festival, and the festival called Lucidity Festival. And I was going there to make a full-length movie, which is online, and you can check it out. It's called Journey to Lucidity. And when I went there, I had this like idea where like I showed up and I had these like scenes written out, and like had like this whole kind of structure and everything like that. And then evidently, when I got to the festival, it was my first time there. And this festival, this is like an arts and hippie music festival type thing. Really, really beautiful. Like lots of yoga workshops and artists and musicians and beautiful souls. Like the friends I had met out in Vancouver, and more friends who I had met recently within my local community. And that's one thing that I didn't mention. Over the past 10 years, I was facilitating weekly open-minded discussion meetings in London, Ontario, every Friday in a yoga studio. I was doing that for like 10 years. And so I was like finding the other people in my community, and the synchronicity was bringing us together. So anyways, that's just one thing. But when I was at this festival, I went through this radical lesson where basically I kind of had this vision of like, okay, here's what it's going to be. Like, this was my attitude. Like, here's like the list of the scenes. And then I got there, and just like the dynamics of the festival and the fact that it was my first time there was so like overwhelming. And it got to the point where like I like broke down, and I was like, this is not working. Like the plan that I thought that I needed to do is not working right now. And then it took me a while where I was like, okay, like, what do I need to do right now? Like, okay, like I'm just gonna do what I can. So let's just like take the camera and just kind of let synchronicity guide me, let my heart guide me. And then from there, opposed to trying to like do the original plan that I thought was supposed to be the plan, I just kind of like allowed myself to switch into this philosophy that I referred to, that I kind of adapted at the time, referred to as radical non-worriness. And so it was kind of really focused on like, okay, I'm here in this moment. I am here for a reason. I know there's a reason for me being here. And I know what my intentions are. My intentions are to tell a story, to be able to document the shift in consciousness, and to kind of show up as my authentic self. And so I started weaving my way through the festival, and then lo and behold, synchronicity started unfolding, and I started meeting people, and I started getting these moments on camera. And it was only like after like a short while after that where I was like, oh my goodness, you know, like I knew that segment that I just filmed, I'm like, whoa, like that was really beautiful. And even in that moment, the universe was kind of reassuring me that it was like, hey, like there's another plan at play. There's how you think things are going to happen, and then there's the way things need to happen. And I think that is something that we can apply to our life in a lot of ways, you know. And again, I'll just kind of say that there's like, you know, what we want, quote unquote, is not always what we need. So when I was able to kind of like get into this place of flow and surrender, and a place of radical non-worriness, but at the same time also joy and excitement, because it was something that I was passionate about, something that I was like naturally just like, yo, I'm so grateful to be here. And then eventually things started unfolding, and then like flash forward and the festival was over, and I'm like, oh my God, like I think I just filmed something incredibly beautiful. And then flash forward 3 months later, and I've edited the movie and I've completed it. And by the time I was done editing the movie, in retrospect, it's hard for me to imagine it being any other way. And I look at it now and I'm like, yo, like this came out exactly how it was meant to, exactly how it needed to be. Despite the fact that going into it, I had this vision of what I thought it was going to be. And the other thing that's kind of the fourth dimensional element of this, which I've, you know, adapted to my philosophy and my way of navigating this reality, was the video, the movie, what it was when it was done, like on the timeline and exported and uploaded, everything like that, like that video always existed. That always existed. That was like that was like a nexus where all things were kind of leading to. And basically, it's kind of like this idea that even when I was editing it, I get into this zone where it's very intuitive. And it's like, okay, it's kind of like, here are all these pieces, and video editing is such a like a metaphysical spiritual thing, because it's like all of these pieces of the puzzle, especially when you're doing a full-length movie and you got like 30 hours of footage, and you're kind of intuitively like, okay, here's the parts that I know are in order, here's the parts that I'm kind of picking out, and then you start adding music to it, and then the music starts synchronizing to it. And again, I know you kind of have a familiarity with this, and if you're ever like editing something and then suddenly the music kind of syncs up perfectly and you're just like, and you're watching it and you start crying and you're just like, holy crap, like this is beautiful, but you're almost editing it and you're almost observing it almost from a third person perspective. It's like you're watching it get built before you, but here you are kind of like this conduit that's just kind of clicking buttons, but you're kind of like intuitively showing up. It's like you almost become an instrument for like the universe to be able to do what it needs to do through us, yet you yourself are that, like you're conscious of it too. So it's like, because at any point you have the free will to just be like, I quit, I walk away. And that is like what's interesting, is that we have the free will to just be like, throw our hands up and be like, screw this, I'm done. But if we choose to keep showing up, then the universe can keep working with us. And so again, it was this really beautiful thing where as I was editing together this movie, you know, by the time it was done, it was just this beautiful thing where it was like, okay, like this is how it was supposed to be. This is how it came to be. So I can kind of apply that to a lot of my work. And again, so just as we pass it back to you, a lot of it, I feel, is kind of like having this deep trust, knowing metaphysical, higher dimensional perspective that the things we're visioning, the data that's in our heart, that exists. And then it's up to us to kind of move forward with clarity in our intention. And then also the ability to have flexibility and to flow with how the path may change in a moment's notice, without trying to like resist it. Because I think it's when we kind of like find that like resistance, that's when we get stuck. So it's like, I think, you know, as a warrior, like it's like we want to be like the bamboo, which is like incredibly flexible type thing. So flexibility and radical non-worriness has been a big part of my philosophy over the years. And in the same way it applied to that movie, it applied to all the videos I make. When I go out and I film a rally, when I do free hugs, I go home and I'm like, all right, got my footage. Let's like kind of see what this is going to turn into. And the last thing I'll just say, just kind of practicalize it. Michelangelo, or I think it was Michelangelo, he would even say, you know, if he had like a slab of marble, he would look at it and he would be like, I can see the statue inside of that. And then he would like, you know, like do his carvings and stuff like that. And the statue would like reveal itself. So it's like he already knew that it was there. And then it's like almost like this reverse time thing where we're just kind of like moving the pieces so that it can come into form. So does that make sense, what I said there? And is that relative?
It does to me. I want to ask you to share with us the name of the movie again. You already did. I did not write it down.
Yeah. So the movie is Journey to Lucidity, and it's on YouTube. It's on my YouTube channel. And so if you literally just go to YouTube and type in Journey to Lucidity, it will show up. And you can find that on Paradigm Shift Central. So that there's 2 movies. Journey to Lucidity 1 and 2 are online. Number 3 is still in post-production. It's been in post-production since 2015. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's like you start editing it and then other stuff builds up. And so that movie's like 50% done, but I have to get back to it. And then there's still number 4 and 5, which I have not even started editing. And those were filmed back in 2015 and 16, which is crazy because I'm like, are those even going to get done? Like, what's happening with that footage? One of the things... like, this is ridiculous, but like one of the things with my journey, unfortunately, and I think this just comes as a side effect of like what this reality is and everything like that. Like, there's been a lot of stuff that I have filmed that never made it onto YouTube. Not yet, at least, not yet. But at the same time, I really like to acknowledge that, like, you know, who we are as creators right now, we're also like time wizards. And so I could literally like edit something that I filmed 3 years ago or even finished 3 years ago, and I could re-upload that to Instagram today and represent it, and it would still be relative today. And if no one's seen it, then it's like still brand new. So I love the idea that, you know, through filmmaking and video editing and media and everything like that, we're like folding time on itself. It's very much like this idea of like the, you know, like the Akashic records, which is a term that I don't expect everybody to be familiar with, but you can kind of like access data in a non-linear way and represent it to, again, the audience and the medium. So yeah. So yeah.
We've been at this for about an hour and we haven't yet really even dived into paradigmshiftcentral.com. And unless you've got to go to the washroom or there's Chinese takeout at the door or something, I'm happy to hang out for a while. I suspect we should
give another however long, less than a half hour.
And I haven't been able to get back around to the Sasquatch again. And I'm seeing many more episodes between us and maybe a whole separate podcast. I don't know. It's like, I feel like the grumpy old man of the two of us. It's like we're sort of half Kermit and half the two old guys from the balcony and the Muppets, which is probably well before your time. You mentioned Star Wars earlier, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm old enough that I was at, like, I saw the original one at the theater, and I was old enough that I can actually remember it. But all of the themes, it's appropriate that I think that we would look at now, Paradigm Shift Central, and I'll refer people to paradigmshiftcentral.com where they can become leading members, which we'll talk about here as we go forward, and see the contribution of others and see what kinds of contributions they would also be welcome to make. Because I think there's an alchemy of, when we think about that, of everything that you've shared so far about things revealing themselves as you go, looking at what is needed as opposed to the way that we think that things are supposed to go, looking for the synchronicities. And when I, from the outside in, look at something like paradigmshiftcentral.com, I'm guessing that you've had to kind of piece by piece and move, kind of bamboo it, where it's purposeful but very flexible at the same time over a period of a lot of years. There are a lot of moving parts and pieces, and unless I miss my guess, I'm thinking you've had to be purposeful but flexible. What's it been like to steer it and move it forward while also allowing it to be what it is destined to become?
Right. So again, like Paradigm Shift Central is more than a website. And I say that in the sense that like Paradigm Shift Central is the community and it's the people and it's the interactions. The website itself is really, in a sense, like the digital archive. It's the nexus. It's the playground that we use. One of many digital spaces that kind of like all come into a single point. So Paradigm Shift Central and again, if people get a chance, go check it out for yourself. What you can see here is that it's like this digital archive of media from a variety of media creators that we've helped feature, that we, like publish content through the website, friends of mine, other creators, people who are listening to this broadcast. And again, in the same way that like I was growing up and back in, 2010, 2011, here I was creating YouTube videos and creating content. And I'm like, okay, like I want to be able to encourage other people to do this too. So let's create a website where we can start like creating a platform for us to be able to share our voice from. And so the website that it is today, like this is like the third iteration of the website for anybody who's like familiar with website design and everything like that. It's basically like I've literally like rebuilt the website 3 times. It's kind of like the Matrix. It like goes through iterations. You kind of refine it as you go. And it's always, and right now it's pretty good. I'll refine it in the future as need be. But it's actually, what's really cool is that I've kind of set it up right now where it's almost like a breathing, living entity where I can like kind of feed content into it, and there's like new content kind of appearing as we go. And even if people aren't checking it regularly, theoretically I want to create something where if somebody's checking it in the future, it would serve as an archive for how the shift in consciousness unfolded. They could like look at this and they could scroll all the way back to like 2010 and they could see some of the videos and kind of see the story and see just, the content. Nowadays, there's so much content being produced that I can't just like, try and put all of it through there. I just feature a little bit of, different creators here and there. And our leading members are people in the community who we help feature as well. But again, beyond just like the videos on the website, a big part of the project has been our regular online broadcasts. And this was something that I started back in 2012. So again, this was kind of like around the time where like, like the 2012 Mayan calendar, all that stuff was happening. And even then there's this talk about this like shift in consciousness that was occurring. So at then this is like before like YouTube, this is before Facebook Live, way before then. It was purely just audio in a podcast format. And even then it was just about being able to practice having conversation, inviting people on to be able to share what they were passionate about, featuring, different creators, being able to like have guided meditations, being able to just like, have discussions that people don't get a chance to talk about, educating people, inspiring people, creating calls to action. Again, at the time, a big part of the project in the earlier days was like me, like really encouraging people to create physical paradigm shift communities where they were. So like we were having ours in Paradigm Shift London, which again started as a single club in Fanshawe. And, again, we were just meeting up every Friday, having open-minded discussions. And I was telling people, I'm like, like if you build it, they will come. Like you can facilitate one of these where you are too. And in around 2014, give or take, it was at kind of its peak where there was like over like 50 paradigm shift communities across the world. So it was like this like straight up like global revolution that was taking place. That shifted over the years only more so as a result of the fact that Facebook kind of changed its structure, and the Facebook pages that we were really dependent on kind of they kind of lost their utility in the same way. So a lot of people, it was hard to keep in contact with them. But if you were to literally just like look up on Facebook like Paradigm Shift and just write a search, you'll see there's like still like a bunch of all of these different locations and pages, but a lot of them have been ghosted. They're not being used anymore. But even still, the people that were involved with them, the seeds were planted, they went on to other things. They're still doing their own things. So a big part of the project, and it's been a big learning curve. Like facilitating online community is one of the hardest things I have ever been a part of, just because there can be so many moving pieces and you're trying to keep track of everything, and you're always trying to find new ways to manage and facilitate and to get the messages across. But at the same time, being able to have the routine and the schedules where it was like, okay, every, in this case, this is our current schedule, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Standard Time, Eastern Standard Time, let's meet up online and let's do a team broadcast. Let's talk about things. Let's educate each other. And so again, we have like regular meditations, global meditations. This Thursday, last Thursday, we had an open mic jam and we were sharing poetry. The week before that, we had a conversation about coronavirus and consciousness. This Thursday, we have a broadcast that we refer to as Dream Class, which we've done plenty of times. And we basically practice talking about dreaming and lucid dreaming and dream practices and dream stories. So we're not just like there just to shoot the shift. That's part of it, but we're also there to like inspire and encourage and to also move the story forward and to document the story as well, to give people a platform to say like, hey, this is what I'm doing to help assist with the shift in consciousness where I am. This is what I'm creating. And so it gives a place for friends of mine, people in the community who are doing awesome things to just be able to practice getting on camera, practice communicating, for other people in the community to be able to connect with their work, for them to be supported, and again, for us to kind of weave this bigger narrative of this team of shifters, of this team of light guardians is a term that I use, of this team of superheroes kind of coming together and helping change the world. And then from the audience perspective, for someone who's just kind of, finding the project for the first time, or they're connecting to my Instagram, they see that and they're just like, yo, this is really cool. And this is something that is incredibly needed within community. And we're seeing that, this is, I find it fascinating with where we are right now because, I've spent the last 10 years familiarizing myself with creating sacred digital space and doing live broadcasts. And now here we are in this moment in our society, and it's like more relevant than ever. And suddenly so many people are doing it, and it's so exciting. And so here I am with like my own little like piece of, my own little sliver of the internet with the people who resonate with what I'm doing. And again, we're just kind of like having fun. We're inspiring each other. Monday to Friday, we're doing morning meditations. I really focus on just kind of like bringing, again, that mix of like joyfulness and playfulness and laughter and everything like that, but also like a real call to action, a seriousness, reminding people of kind of like what is needed right now and the importance of them, for them to take care of themselves and to be in their own heart and to be beacons of inspiration and to be there for friends and family and to, again, use the power of their heart to share kindness and to, acts of compassion, little things that make a big difference. So that's kind of the story. And it's one of those things where, even with where we are now, like, I don't know what the future is entirely. Like, I know what I'm going to keep doing, and it's just kind of allowing the story to unfold. But I know that what we are doing is inspiring people, and inspiring people is one of the most important things that we can do. And it's why I appreciate so much of what you do, Kevin, and why I think we get along so well, because we're doing very much the same thing. We're giving a place for people to share their stories, to share their passions, to share their voice, to share their heart, and other people are tuning into this, and it's inspiring them to do the same, and it's a ripple effect and everything like that. So yeah, again, the Paradigm Shift Central community, I'm super, super grateful. I'm super grateful for everybody, for the audience, for my friends who tune into this, who support me in all the ways that they do. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, let's just take it one day at a time. Let's show up. Let's create routine. Let's do meditations. Let's create intention. Let's share content. Let's, be there for one another. And at this point, there's so much going on that, and I think a lot of us are feeling this, like the future is now uncertain, but at the same time, that uncertainty like kind of forces us to be present in the moment. So without having to try to lose ourselves in the thoughts of the future, let's just focus on doing what we can right here and right now. And even if what we can do here right now is simply being there for one another digitally, being in this sacred digital space, supporting each other, listening and inspiring one another. And if we do that, if we listen to our hearts and doing that, like the bigger story unfolds, the movie gets created, even if we don't fully know exactly what the end product is going to be. So, yeah.
Yeah. I would probably argue the future was uncertain or is uncertain regardless, it's, but it's just looking a lot different than, again, at the time that we're having this discussion, somebody may find this years from now, to your point that you were mentioning earlier about the magic of this kind of content and its lifespan, that somebody may come across it in the time that we're working through right now has long since been resolved. And here now is an incredible opportunity to shift the consciousness. And I think that the contrast of the current coronavirus situation worldwide gives you, just as anything, two sides to the coin. There's the one that is in front of us every day is obvious, that's unpleasant and uncomfortable. And, but then that when you know what you don't want, you also get a better idea of what you do.
Yeah.
So here now is an opportunity. I'd like to invite you to talk a little bit about how and why people might look to become leading members within the Paradigm Shift Central community, because I know that there are many different levels to that. And if I could just ask you to maybe speak to that a little bit, and I'm actually going to put the link up as you do that. But I guess we'll maybe start by that. I'll ask you, how would you classify, or how would you describe what a leading member is? What does that mean?
For sure. So I mentioned earlier that I have a Patreon, and Patreon, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a really, really cool social media platform where artists can create a profile, and then they can invite community members to be able to support them with monthly micro contributions or contributions of any level. And that's supporting them in, doing this as their job, as their passion, creating content. And then through the Patreon, people can offer like special perks, special exclusive content. And so for the Patreon that I've created, which again, you can see on the link here, patreon.com/Brendon Culliton, basically within that, people can support in a few different ways. They can literally just support financially and just be like, yo, I love what you do. You already provide so much value. Keep doing it. Because a lot of the stuff that I do for the community is like just put out there for free, because again, I want the message to get out there. I want the content to be available. And then as a option within the Patreon, people can contribute $11 a month or higher. And in doing so, that is where they have the option to join as a leading member. And long story short, leading members are people that can join on our on-air broadcast. They have priority to join our on-air broadcast. They can join our private team chat. They get to work alongside me as a conscious media creation coach to be able to help them get clarity on what they're creating so that I can assist them with things. They can feature their content through the website. And it's just a cool place for people to be able to like connect with other like-minded, like-hearted, conscious media creators, conscious entrepreneurs, creators, free huggers. And so, yeah, the big part of the project has been about building the team. And so the leading members are, again, just members of the team who are helping get their content featured and contributing at that level or higher. And they also get discounts on items such as the free hugs and the shift button. So yeah, I mean, more or less, that's really all there is to explain. But in a simple way of putting it, I see everybody who's involved with the community as a member. And that's kind of why I use the term leading member. It's not like you like have to be a leading member in order to be a part of the team. If people are just tuning into the broadcast and they're tuning into my, they're following me on Instagram, like they're still a part of the team. They're still a part of the community. And then there's the option to become a leading member. So yeah, that's basically all there is to it, to the leading members. And shout out to all the leading members who are listening to this right now. You guys are awesome.
You talked about when I mentioned about vision versus just being present with whatever the current step is that we're on, and then the next immediate step, and allowing that to unfold. But along the lines of the vision, what are some of the things that are percolating that are not so far out there as to be unreachable, but they're close enough that they're kind of tantalizing you, that you'd really like to try or experience, or maybe take to another level of expansion that you haven't quite yet? What comes to mind?
There's always been the desire to really help facilitate some like big global meditations, like I've done a lot of global meditations over the years. Some of them have been like quite substantial, like hundreds of people tuned in. It's been very interesting because, like some people, they create content, and for one reason or another, like their accounts just go super viral and they blow up and everything like that. It's been interesting because a lot of my social media stuff, like my YouTube channel, like it's been at like 10K subscribers for like several years now. Like it just hasn't really like gone super viral, even though the people who are familiar with my content are like, yo, like this should be seen by a lot of people. Like this is really good. And again, like this is, coming from the fact that like I've gone to school for media production. I'm an award-winning Canadian filmmaker. Like I know I've created really, really cool content. But then at the same time, it's like, the meditations that we're doing, there's still people tuning in afterwards. It's hard for me to really get a full scope on the numbers. But on average, like when we do it live, like at the most, you might have maybe like 30, 40 people tuned in, and that's across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. But right now, like it's really interesting. It's really exciting because as I'm continuing to do what I do, it seems that more people, like literally just within the past month, as a result of things shifting and friends like just kind of putting the word out there, and super grateful for everybody who just, word of mouth lets people know about what I'm doing, connects them to my Instagram, all those things. It seems that there's a lot more people who are starting to come across my work for the first time, and they're like, yo, like this guy is like a badass and I want to pay attention to what he's doing. And this is really cool. So I feel like, I've been kind of preparing for the idea of being able to like be in front of a larger and larger and larger audience. Given the fact that like in a lot of ways, like when I do live broadcasts, I kind of have this mindset where it's like, even right now, like I would show up with the same energy if there was 1,000 people, even if there was 10 people, so it's like, it's kind of like always kind of putting out that vibrational frequency. And then as you do that, you kind of like attract it, you kind of like manifest it in that sense. So there's the meditations that we're doing every morning, Monday to Friday. And those are the Waking Up with Wolf meditations. And those are starting to get more popular. More people are starting to tune into those. And again, they're enjoying them just probably because it's something, it's probably like, a different flavor than the other content that's out there. And that's the thing with all of the members in the community is I really honor the fact that everybody's kind of got their own flavor, their own style, their own authentic self. And it's never anything where it's a competition. And so in doing that, just by me being my authentic self, it's starting to get really interesting where a lot of people are like, yo, here's this guy like doing free hugs, Mystic Spider-Man stuff, which we haven't specifically even talked about during this broadcast, where it's like me doing free hugs as Mystic Spider-Man. And again, that superhero archetype, literally not just as an idea, but like as an actual physical manifestation and an embodiment. And so people are kind of seeing this energy and this story that I carry, where again, it's like, here he is, like this like real world superhero using the power of his heart. And he's kind of like a Jedi, and he's a light guardian, and he's a badass, but he's funny and he's cute and he's like playful, but he's serious. And that's just me being me. And so as it kind of like moves forward and I just keep doing what I'm doing, I'm anticipating without expecting that more people are going to start tuning into broadcasts. And then there's some upcoming broadcasts that are happening, full moon broadcasts. There's some big meditations that a lot of people are talking about on April 4th. There's some friends that I have who like they're featuring me on their channels, and they've got access to a bunch of people. So I think one of these days, it's just a matter of time until I'm going to be like facilitating some global meditations with like thousands of people tuned in, and I'll be ready for it because I've spent the last number of years doing all of this practice leading up to it. And again, it's kind of one of those things where I tell people, it's like, like everything that we've been doing has been preparing us for where we are now. And right now, like what we are doing, you yourself, all of us, helping one another, sending out our message, broadcasting a signal of hope, raising the morale of the team, like in hockey, right? Where the morale is such a valuable thing. And that's where it comes down to, authentic leadership and having that, like, nurturing the self so you can show up for others. So I really am, just kind of keeping on my path and just like, understanding that the right people will find me at the right time, and strategically at the same time being an ambassador for my work. Like that's a big part. It's not like I just like create stuff and hope people show up. Like I gotta create stuff, and then I gotta like use social media tactics. I gotta become a TikTok star. That's like my next thing. I'm gonna blow up on TikTok. Just you wait. Like I know like the stuff I create, like they're like the TikTok audience will eat that up, man. Like they love like Spider-Man cosplay, let alone Spider-Man cosplay with Jedi spiritual stuff. So that's gonna be kind of like my next scope of
and
things.
Drunk university students.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So like, and using the humor and the playfulness and stuff like that. So I know, again, I honor everybody for having their own unique style that they bring, you yourself, Kevin, and all of us. And at the end of the day, I just want people to kind of like find that kind of spark where they're just like, this is who I am, and to kind of show that. And then in doing that, we become permissionaries. We help other people to be like, yo, like maybe I'm going to do a live broadcast. Maybe I'm going to create a video, sharing my heart song sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to the idea that, with the global meditations we do, I know the past ones that we've done have like really like been meaningful for people. Like I take pride, this is funny. I take pride in creating content that like has made people cry. Like literally, like in good ways. And that's like something that comes from a practice where again, you know, I can kind of like drop them into this space. And right now I'm kind of talking really fast, but like there's another side where I can kind of like just like drop into this like really meditative Zen, like like just like slow cadence and really just speaking with a different tonation. And it's like, and with the meditation stories I do, a lot of them I've done, they're almost like first person stories, and we take them through a story, and you like meet characters, you like meet Merlin, and you like talk to like, you know, like Mother Gaia and all this really, really cool stuff. And so I'm just kind of like, you know, all that in the past is just kind of like leading me up to the point where I foresee in the future, like, yeah, like, Brendon, what are you going to do when you're on a stage and someone says lead a meditation with 100,000 people tuned in? Will you be ready for that? And my answer will be yes, because I'm here now.
See, I've got a theory on stuff like that. I think, Brendon, with to your point about going on the journey and being ready, and everything that we're experiencing equipping us to be ready for that next thing. That, as you don't need me to tell you, that especially in the online space and YouTube influencers and whatever kind of media that you want, as you know, I deal a lot in the sales and marketing and media space and more traditional marketing with businesses, and I get really weary really quickly of the niche thing, of the find one thing going inch wide and a mile deep, and then like someone would argue to me, okay, so you market, you help small businesses with their marketing. Okay, well, what you should do, because you used to work in the radio broadcasting, is you should niche down to where you only work with radio sales representatives, and you'll be that guy. And my argument about that is that you can probably get to a result more quickly when you niche down to that level of specificity, but you're sacrificing a much broader expanse horizon. The ceiling's nowhere near as large as it is to where the reverse of that, or the other side of that, are guys like you and I, who are just allowing ourselves to let this unfold, to realize that we are all interconnected, and that it doesn't matter if what you do for a living or what the color of your skin is, but that if you're human, there are certain universal truths that are going to resonate with you. And you don't drill down to the specifics, but you allow yourself to express from the heart and allow it to unfold in its own time, and allow the laws of nature and the law of the farm and universal laws and all of those things to take place. That I think, not to argue for my limitations, but my experience has been it's tougher to get going. It takes time. It's like you mentioned the bamboo tree earlier. Well, isn't that the one that for 3 or 5 years nothing happens?
Right. Yeah.
But then once that sucker shoots up to the sky, so I'll be interested to see, because my journey kind of parallels yours. It just hasn't been as long with what I've been doing, for instance, with this podcast and other things like that. But from the feedback that I get from my speaking, from Mondays London, from my online community, your observations about how challenging that can be to lead community online really resonate with me. From the podcast, the quality of the feedback that guys like us get doesn't seem to line up with the audience and the monetization that we think should be there. And now here we are making up the rules. But there's that feeling, that pull of synchronicity, that aliveness of purpose, that tugging of the next wave, the next thing, the next expansion, that tells me anyway, Kevin, there's no sense dwelling in the minutia of the moment when you can't even conceive of what awaits. So you need to allow yourself to just continue to expand and to try and to grow. Does that resonate at all with you? Because I feel like we're on similar paths in our own way, that, you know, as Abraham would say, getting ready to be ready, that if somebody had thrown you in front of 100,000 people 3 or 4 years ago, you wouldn't have been as ready for it as you will be as you would be now, or you will be in a
Mhm.
few years' time.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think again, you know, like you're right. Like kind of going back to the niche thing. I think that's actually been like a bit of the struggle with part of what I've done is that my niche has always been kind of broad. You know, like
Yeah.
my niche is like to help shift consciousness any way I can, right?
Yeah.
And so that
Yep.
can be like all sorts of different videos. And I know there's a lot of YouTubers and they'll just kind of make like the same video over and over and over and over again, and their channel blows up. And
Yeah.
then here I am. Here's like a free hugs video. Here's a full length movie. Here's a meditation. Here's a funny video. Here's a video of my dog. You know, and it's just kind of like this mix of thing. And so learning how to be able to like brand ourselves and to be able to like, you know, just understand that like we are our own brand is something that's incredibly valuable. And again, it's one of those things where it's like being able to position yourself and understanding that like the right people will find you while also being an ambassador for your work at the same time. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I mean, I'm just trying to with everything you said there and everything like that. If you want to maybe just like ask me another question or just prompt me in a way that you kind of want to go with
Well,
this, but
yeah, I maybe went on a little bit of a soliloquy, but I guess I would also offer, just for people to think about on the heels of what you've just shared about what your experience has been like, is that I know a lot of people who have niched down and been very successful and then found themselves in a spot just as humans and as like with going like, now what?
yeah, true, right?
It's almost
Yeah.
like being typecast in a role that when you're only known as playing
Mm,
that one character, well, then what do you do? And I think it's worth thinking about as you're going through
yeah.
your journey, and still plays back into the themes of allowing things to unfold versus feeling like we need to engineer every last bit of our experience.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I've always kind of said, you know, we have to meet the universe halfway, and so I think you're right. Like we do kind of have to be like engineers of our own fate, while also understanding that there's kind of like another element to it that may kind of like be beyond our control. And I think if anything, I would say, you know, like being able to put forth our best effort, put forth our honest effort is always something really important. And to understand that, you know, even when I was making videos back in the day, I was literally making them with the understanding that like, okay, I'm going to make this video because this video is going to like give me the learning experience that's going to help me make the next video. And that's going to help me make the next video and the next video and the next video and the next video. And it was always kind of that idea, without ever trying to like, you know, like become too much of a perfectionist and become too much of one thing. And I always took value in the fact that, you know, I was able to kind of like explore a variety of things. I could put on quite a few different hats. I could literally be like a shapeshifter in that sense. And that's not to say I'm not possible in just kind of like niching down. It just kind of depends on like who the audience is. And I think that's a big part of it, you know, like who are you speaking to? And can you kind of like, you know, become like something that's going to allow it to be like, you know, easier for them to understand opposed to, you know, being a niche that's like outside of their familiarity and things like that. So yeah, you know, like I think it's important to be able to kind of like play around with the paint and to create a variety of different pictures and to use different all, you know, use paint, use pencil crayons, use canvas, use construction paper, use clay. Like don't like you are a being of infinite creativity and you owe it to yourself to be able to explore that infinite creativity. And I guess that's something that I've always just kind of naturally done. And even still, like there's so much stuff that like I still want to create. And I think, you know, that is a beautiful thing to be able to feel the idea that like there's so much that I want to create that I know I'm never going to run out of work. Like there's no day that goes by where I don't have anything to do. And I think that's kind of like the thing that, you know, for all of us, we can kind of tap into that place of creativity. And I think that's where, again, having a social media platform and having, you know, a community who's paying attention can be very inspiring for us, and also, you know, kind of like hold us into a place of accountability, and also just kind of, you know, like give us that little bit of inspiration to be able to say like, oh, sweet, like I know that like 100 people are going to pay attention if I'm going to share something cool. All right, I'm going to share something cool. And that actually has been a big part of the motivation with creating Paradigm Shift. And it's still something that, you know, I'm still trying to figure out how to be able to evolve it the best way I can. But in addition to like me being, like a well-known YouTuber and things like that, a big part of my mission has been to be able to find the people who may have a smaller audience and to be able to help give them a shared platform to be able to, inspire them to be able to be like, yo, like, okay, welcome to Paradigm Shift Central. My name's Brendon. You've already subscribed to my channel. And now let's pay attention to little Joey's video who just started and he's only got 10 subscribers, but his content's super awesome. And 100 people see little Joey's video and they start commenting on it. They're like, yo, little Joey, you're awesome, dude. Keep going. Imagine how that's going to feel for little Joey and how much that will actually inspire them into that next level. So the way how I see this, and I guess we'll have to get close to wrapping this up, and maybe if there's a couple questions, if people want to ask them, but like the way how I like to think of it is that like as the water rises, so does every ship. And so even for me, as much as there is some sort of parallel reality where if I didn't spend all my time doing live broadcasts and managing the team, if I just focused on creating like particular niche YouTube videos, maybe I would have like 1 million subscribers, maybe. And at the same time, like it's just understanding that like it really comes down to, sorry, I kind of tripped over my own thoughts there. But there's something very particular. Quick, Kevin, jump in. There's something particular I was going to say. Talk something. I got to remember what I was going to say.
I'm just going to hide over here. I don't want to start a thought because as soon as I do, you're going to find the one that you were tripping over.
No, that's what I'm looking for. I was talking about something.
Don't you love it when that happens? It happens to me too. I was just going to add in that.
Yeah.
See, this is exactly what I was saying was going to happen. Yeah. Now you're just toying. I've got this little button that I can press here where I can mute him and I can even make him disappear just like
you
this.
Go first.
See? Watch this. I could just there. See, he's gone. Just like just shove him out. No, this way. I shove him. I'm going to bring him back. Hang on. Let me just bring him back. No, he bolted. He left. I was going to say it is clearly it's time to wrap up.
Clearly,
what I was going to suggest was, I mean, ultimately, however it looks for each of us as individuals and as the collective, the goal is to be happy.
Yeah.
The goal is to live a fulfilled and fulfilling life and to feel content and present and grateful and loving and experience as much of those things as much as we can. And so do your thing, right? If that's to niche down, do your thing. And if it's to do a lot of different things, then do that, because if you're happy in the doing it, what is there that missing?
Yeah, do what makes your heart sing. Yeah, do what makes your heart sing. I like that saying. Yeah.
So if it's singing, keep singing, and then what will be will be. I got to say, Brendon, I'm so grateful that we have connected. I feel like even though we've been pals for a little while now, and we've been working together on Mondays London for a little over a year, I feel like we have only just barely begun to really investigate what the possibilities are. And I feel it's going to be really interesting to see what that collaboration brings and how that adds to and influences and fuels each of our respective individual efforts, if I can put it that way. But I'm really grateful, and I really, really love you, and I really appreciate you, and and you're a prime example of what the gurus say about the law of attraction, that when you do allow yourself to move forward and not worry about the how, that people will come across your path almost as if by magic. And I consider you to be one of them, and that's a real joy. That really gets me singing. And to be able to have conversations like this, it's I think even forward to a point you made, I don't know, an hour and a half ago about of how this kind of content that we're creating. Imagine our parents or our parents' parents doing something like this that we could look back upon, and this will outlive both of us, and that my kids and my grandkids one day will kind of be able to get a sense of how their dad or their granddad or their great granddad was searching around and trying to do his best, and to have people to share that with and learn from and to be encouraged by and to encourage, I think is a really wonderful thing. And I want to thank you for that. And thank you for being here with me tonight.
Likewise. And I remembered exactly what I was going to say, and I'll finish it here because this is an important thought. Again, it was going back to the idea of as the water rises, so does every ship. And for me, a big motivator, and everything that I've always done has always been about the community, has always been about being able to help others where I can. And I like way back, like even when I first started the project, you know, like it was always like, what can I do to help others? How can I create space? How can I do something that's going to not only accelerate their growth, but accelerate our growth? And so again, you know, if I'm in this place where, you know, I've got a little bit of an audience, I've got this project going under my belt, I've got this game, this community, this project that I can invite people to and say like, yo, let's play together and let's grow together. Like, how can I use my privilege to be able to help support others? And so for me, like, that's a big thing. And you know, for those of you who are familiar with like astrology and stuff like that, I'm born within the zodiac, within the astrology sign of Cancer, and Cancer is like we're traditionally like very community oriented, and I exhibit, like, that's just me being me. Like, I exhibit it to a T, in the sense that, like, yeah, like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, not just because, hey, I want to get more popular, but because I want to be successful in helping others. And that's always the big thing, is that, you know, there's a big difference between popularity and success. And even though I may not be the most popular, like, yeah, I'm popular. There's a bunch of people online who know me, but I am incredibly successful because of the relationships that I've been fortunate to be able to build over the years with the people who connect and reach out and share their messages and tell me how grateful they are. And I get to know them and everything like that. And just being able to support each other and inspire one another. And again, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if I can, you know, spark something within them, and then they kind of like exhibit their authentic self and they start singing their heart song, they're going to inspire other people. And that's the mathematical equation of the ripple effect. And that's, again, you know, like where the paradigms continue to shift. I know that like the work that I do has had an impact that is far beyond my scope. There are people who have been impacted by my work, and I may never hear their comments. I may never know how it made their day. And it goes the same for both of us, you know, and I think that's something that sometimes we need to remind ourselves, because sometimes, you know, there may not be like a bunch of new messages in our inbox from people telling us how much they love our work and everything like that. But I think at the end of the day, we just kind of have to be able to deeply know and trust that by us simply showing up as our authentic self, the work is being done. And it may not always be seen, but it is being done. So again, you know, I just thank everybody who has tuned into my work. And for those of you who are tuning into listening to this conversation and perhaps, you know, connecting with my work for the first time, to thank you for like taking whatever inspiration I can share that you can receive, and then to continue to share it forward. And again, be that through creating your art, be that through acts of kindness, be that through taking care of yourself, be that through, you know, starting to like learn how to practice mindfulness and meditation. And, you know, we're all here to just be able to walk each other home, and we're all here to level up together. And we're all a bunch of badass superheroes here to help change the world and shift the paradigms. And that's the story that's unfolding before us. So
that's a great way to leave it. Let's call it a podcast.
Perfect.
And thank you again so much. I look forward to our adventures, and hope that people will reach out to you, become leading members, and be a part of the community. Thanks for being who you are, B. Love you.
Thank you. Yes, by all means, anybody watching this, please feel free to message me. And thank you again, Kevin. Super grateful. So go team.
Absolutely. ParadigmShiftCentral.com is where you will find Brendon. This has been episode number 102. We're up over the century mark, where the kids are growing up here on Journeys with the No Schedule Man. Although I suppose the idea of growing up is relative. But please do reach out to Brendon and learn more about what he's doing. And by all means, get involved and contribute. I think that you'll find that it's going to be a really rewarding addition to your life. Just a reminder that you can find all of the episodes of Journeys with the No Schedule Man on our website at noscheduleman.com. While you're there, why not jump on board via email and get our Letters from the Little Engine inspirational email right into your inbox every couple of weeks. And we'll also let you know of anything else that we think that you might want to know about, including upcoming or past episodes of this podcast. You can also subscribe via audio or video. All of the audio of all 102 broadcasts are available for free on demand anytime on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, as well as providers like Libsyn, which sends it out to probably a whole bunch of places that I don't even know about. You can find the videos at YouTube or on Facebook, and our handle at each of those places is at No Schedule Man. And of course, you can find it all at noscheduleman.com. I want to say a quick thanks again to Diamond and Gold Treasures, Trickett Financial, Momondays London, Provincial Glass and Mirror, Mulligan Realty Group, and theturtletribe.com for their support of Journeys with the No Schedule Man. Most of all, I want to thank you. And on behalf of Brendon Culliton, my name is Kevin Bulmer. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.